Recording in progress.
Hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, May 8th, 2023. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Etten.
Here.
Councilmember Groff.
Here.
Councilmember Strawn.
Here.
Councilmember Shorter.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. And with us at the dais, we have our City Attorney, Rachel Tierney, on my right at the end of the dais, and our City Manager, Pat Trudgeon, on my left at the other end of the dais. We have a number of staff and guests who will be participating in the meeting, and we'll make introductions as those folks come for their portions of the agenda. Do want to make sure if you're here in person that you check your cell phone and either silence it or otherwise make sure it doesn't disrupt the meeting this evening. Mr. Trudgeon, do we have anybody participating remotely online?
We do not.
Okay. Otherwise, I would go through the parameters for that, but we'll skip that for this evening. And with that, then we can proceed with the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. We ask folks to stand if you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next on our agenda then is approval of tonight's agenda. First, I'll always check with staff to see if there are any items that staff recommends changing. Mr. Trudgeon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I would request that 10A approved payments be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration. We had the wrong attachment in the packet, the wrong information, so that's since been corrected earlier this morning. But I'd like to have that up as a separate action.
All right. Are there any changes requested by council members or items council members would like removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Doesn't appear to be. We'll just do a quick double check with folks here in the audience. If you're here to either comment or ask a question about an item on the second page of our agenda in section 10, items 10A through J, this would be an opportunity to let us know if you're here to either speak to one of those or ask a question. We do want to make sure, because that is scheduled late in the meeting, that if you're here for that item, that you have a chance to address your question or comment to the council earlier in the meeting. So we do always want to check. We'll check with folks if you're here for an item once again in section 10 of tonight's agenda. If you could just let us know at this time. Does not appear to be the case. So with that, we've got the request to approve the agenda with item 10A removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration. Is there a motion?
So moved. Approval. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Etten to approve the agenda with that amendment. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda this evening. Next on the agenda is an opportunity for public comment. This is a chance for folks in the public to speak on items that are not on tonight's agenda but may be of interest to people in the city or related to city business. We will provide an opportunity for members of the public to speak as agenda items come up, but we always do want to provide that general comment opportunity at the start of each meeting. Just quickly on the protocol, we just ask folks to introduce themselves with their name and street or address for the record, address comments or questions to the council, and we do have a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which is usually pretty easy to stay within. With that, I see we've got a member of the public here, so I'll turn it over to you for your comments.
Hey, Roger Hess Jr., Wagner Place. And if it's allowed, I'd like to ask a couple of questions later of the auditors. But first, I'd have a few things I'd like you to consider discussing or whatever. So it would be nice if there was some hoops, some basketball hoops that were toddler height in some of the parks. I mean, even if 5 or 6 parks had toddler size would be nice, because my grandson loves to play at grounds, but he can't reach the basketball 10-foot ones yet. So it would be nice if you put around some of the parks some that kids 5 to 10 years old could reach with a shot. And if you want, I'll contribute 5 basketball hoops and they don't need to have something solid ground under it. They just need a post, which you got a lot of posts just to stick it on there. Then it would be nice if you brought the open house back again, which also would be a good place where you're considering council engagement opportunities. Then you could see what kind of engagement would happen in a relaxed setting. The open houses were always very popular. It had tons of people there. It'd be nice if you'd bring it back. That would be very nice. And a few years ago, the council thought that you're hiring way too many outside consultants. And so for a while, you really tried to cut that down. Seems like the last few years, just about everything that you do, you need an outside consultant for. It'd be nice if you start thinking maybe if you don't really need all of them or not. And as I mentioned before, let's see, I've spent a lot of time at the U of M campus lately, and I see emergency call boxes everywhere. And I still think we should get them in our parks, especially at the pool. I mean, it would be nice if you even just you have already Wi-Fi there, so it'd be easy to hook up an emergency call box, which you can buy them for a few $100s up to whatever you want to spend for really fancy ones. But I think it's really important to have one at the pool, because when people are there, they don't know the name of the park, they don't know the address, they don't even know the cross streets. And if there's an emergency, they have to take time to try to figure that out. And because the 911 people don't know, if you tell them you're at Autumn Grove Park, they don't know where it is, they don't even know where the county parks are. So it would be really something, I mean, you spent $9,000 just to have the right to get a fence. You should be able to spend $500 or whatever, and at least at the pool, to have a decent emergency call box. And again, if it's money, I'll give you up to $1,000 to put an emergency call box at the pool, just as an experiment. And if it works out, fine, you can do it in other parks. If it doesn't work out, then you don't have to, you know it didn't work out. And the last thing, as I've mentioned before, I think we should expand the council to 6 members rather than 4 to get more diversity. There's no diversity at the time right now, and it probably won't happen until you have more seats up there. And you always say you want more public engagement. Why not do it? Coon Rapids does it. I'm sure other cities do it. So why not go to 6? I mean, for the future, it'd be good too, because I know in the past there have been times when 3 council members have hijacked the council. It's happened a few times in our history, and I don't want to see it happen again. I want everyone to have an equal possibility of getting what they want done in the city. So I don't know, it'd be something, at least give a discussion about it. Maybe set up a panel or something to see if it's something worthwhile or not. If it's not, fine, but if it might be useful, why not do it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. And we have made note of those offers to provide contributions to help those items.
It's on record.
You're on the hook potentially here. So, but definitely, I think those questions and requests are worth getting some feedback from staff on. So we'll certainly follow up on those. Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment this evening? All right. Seeing no one, then we'll proceed with the agenda. And I would note, certainly you'll have an opportunity for public comment during the audit presentation as well, or as part of that agenda item. Next on our agenda is recognitions and donations. We have one item this evening under recognitions, which is a proclamation related to Police Officers Memorial Day and National Police Week in Roseville. And I'll read the proclamation, and then a motion to adopt would be in order. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated the week in which May 15th occurs as National Police Week, and May 15th itself as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and whereas the Roseville Police Department plays an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of all members of the community, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting people against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the Roseville Police Department unceasingly provide this vital service, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Roseville hereby declare the week of May 11th through 17th of 2023 to be National Police Week in the city, and May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day. Be it further resolved that the City of Roseville calls upon all citizens to join in commemorating law enforcement officers past and present who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities and have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. And be it further resolved to observe May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day in Roseville in honor of law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community, which includes Roseville Officer Howard Johnson and Officer Bruce Russell, or who have become disabled in the performance of their duty, and let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Atten, seconded by Councilmember Strawn. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that proclamation is approved. That brings us then to consideration of items removed from the consent agenda. We do have one item, item 10A, which was asked by staff to be removed from consent for separate consideration. We'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon to introduce that item for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies. We had the same amount and the same attachment in the packet for tonight as the April 24th meeting for the approval of payments. I didn't catch that until this morning. So I did send out the revised one to all the council. Hopefully you had a chance to look at that. But the revised amount is $889,953.67 they were asking for approval. The only reason I pulled it is because it was wrong initially, but the online packet's been updated, and just want to make it clear that this is what we're approving, not from the original agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there any questions from the council for staff on the request to approve the payments? All right. We'll just double check if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to comment on this item at this time. Does not appear to be the case. Then it's up for council consideration to approve the payments for the time period as presented in the supplementary information that was provided with the update this morning.
I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve the payments as outlined in the supplemental information. All those in favor, I should ask, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and those payments are approved. That then brings us to our business items this evening. Our first business item is to receive an update from our Ramsey County Commissioner, Mary Jo McGuire, who is with us this evening for that update, and we look forward to hearing about how things are going at Ramsey County and what is new. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner McGuire. Welcome you to the meeting and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager, and City Attorney. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for giving me the time that we have. I'm going to pull up my presentation here. And I think we said Control L. There we are. Oh, is it? It's on my computer.
Yeah, we just need it to come
Oh,
up on the big
okay.
screen. When you see it up there, you'll know you're good.
All right. Excellent. So thank you again for giving me the time to be here. I was just on a Roseville Area Community Foundation meeting, and I was asked by my board members to thank the City Council. I said I'm off to the City Council to thank you all for, of course, helping support the Roseville Community Foundation. We, allocate resources to the community in the Roseville school area, but it's all the Roseville dollars from the VFW, and it does such good community work. So thank you for your support of the foundation. And also, as a resident of Roseville, I just want to thank you all for your great work on the council and in really managing a great city that I'm really fortunate to live in. I grew up in this area. I was born and raised in Falcon Heights, but attended many events and attended school here in Roseville. So this is great, and I live here now. And the third thing I want to thank you for is the pickleball courts. So thank you for that. You know, as I've been here before, I've been asking you for pickleball courts, and you now have some designated pickleball courts. So I'll just ask for now if you could strike tennis courts. I know that's controversial, but those of us that play pickleball really love having more opportunities to do that. All right, with that, I'm going to start with my presentation. This is an overview of some things that we're working on together. I so appreciate, the county so appreciates all the cooperation, the coordination, and the partnership that we have with all of our cities, especially Roseville. Our staff works really closely with your staff, we hope, and if they don't, that's what I'm here for, to hear about that and to help make that happen in an even more productive way and in a more efficient way. So I'm going to go through these slides, and I know that I'm not going to take up the bulk of I don't want to take up the bulk of your meeting, so we can always come back, our staff can come back, do more details in a workshop. If you have further questions on things that take more time, we are happy to come back at any time to explain how things are going with all of us. And I know that I've been meeting with, I have appointments to meet with many of you, with all of you, in coffee, so we can have one-on-one conversations, and I really appreciate that with those that have been able to do that. I'm looking forward to those that we've still scheduled in the future. So with that, I just want to remind our viewing public and all of you about Ramsey County's vision, mission, and goals. We are a vibrant community where all are valued and thrive, and we are striving to be a county of excellence, working with you to enhance our quality of life. And we do that with our service team model of well-being, prosperity, opportunity, and accountability, just to ground us. Since I've spoken to you, you know, we've had a lot of things going on. The pandemic was one of them, and I just wanted to give you the CARES update about where we allocated our CARES dollars. Our first allocation of the resources from the federal government, we did put into major emergency kinds of services. So it was home and help with housing, food, financial assistance, employment support, small business support, and emergency expenses, including public safety. So I think, and you were allocated some of those dollars, and I know we worked together with you on many of that. And if you want, like I said, if you want any greater detail in any of these, I'm happy to go into that. So then we had the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. That was the next round of resources, which we believe has really helped transform the work that Ramsey County has done. And in partnership with our cities, we do feel like we have been able to really go beyond just surviving, that we have been able to really invest in our community and move forward. You know, it's hard to be at just a survival mode. And I'll give the example of housing and homelessness, where a bulk of our dollars are going, because we were spending so many of our resources just on shelters when we knew we needed to actually get into the permanent housing. And I want to thank Roseville for the permanent housing that you are really working on and building. And we have an amazing department now that is working on this. And so most of our dollars, bulk of our ARPA dollars went into more permanent housing. And we're grateful for that. Justice system reforms, $16 million. We know we have public safety issues, and we really want to get ahead of the game on that with our Healing Streets program and our prevention and early intervention in that. Public health, we say we are a county where, you know, all things are health related. So we are very focused on, of course, public health. And then workforce is a huge issue for us, I know for all cities. And we're really working on making sure that we have people prepared to fill the jobs that we have that are available with our business community. And you can see that we have other items on racial equity, community engagement. We're very focused on that as well. So some of the areas that we're working on, we strive to partner with you and all of our other cities on our legislative issues, and we have been working really hard. Our entire board is down at the Capitol a lot. We're very involved in our state association, where all 87 counties are working on some of these issues, and we've been focused on our county program aid and our local government aid. We know cities need local government aid, counties need county program aid, and we have been fighting really hard at the Capitol to increase that aid that we all need to have flexible funding to do the work that we are required to do by our legislators. Public safety resources, we're advocating for more probation funding and community supervision funding that all counties need. We have 87 counties in the whole state that are aligned actually on all of these issues. And so we're working really hard to make sure that the legislature understands that we all need these resources. Transportation funds, we know we continue to need those, and housing supports. Ramsey County especially is advocating for a very specific amount to really move beyond our shelters into permanent housing. And we have a lot of need in that area. Transportation projects, we have current projects, potholes, we know we're working on those, so you can continue to call my office, but we know we are working on those. So we are hearing from the people, and we have actually a website. I think many people know this. We have a website where you can tell us about those horrible potholes in your neighborhood, and that's, helpful. When they're so bad, they have to take precedence over some of the others, so let us know. Resurfacing County Road B from Dale to Wright Street, and resurfacing Lexington. These are largely finished. Striping is finalizing. I was putting this presentation together, and this was in the works, and now it's pretty much complete. And so we're really grateful that we were able to get those projects done. So thanks to everyone who had patience during that time of traffic disruption. These are some immediate future projects, which we're working with you on as we speak. I know on your consent agenda today, you actually have some approvals, for work with Ramsey County, but these are just some of the future projects that we have in the works with Roseville. And so it's County Road B, it's the 4 to 3 conversion on Dale Street, drainage project on Hamlin, Victoria Street from County Road C in Cannon, and the north end of Rice and Larpenteur. So we are continually working with our cities on these projects, and so our Public Works Department works closely with you all, and if we're not, then let me know. And I'm hopeful, and what I hear is that we are. So I'm glad to hear that.
Commissioner McGuire, I think we have a question.
Oh yes, go.
Just go back on slide, please.
Sure.
Thank you for detailing the time frame from this. Looking at that north end of Rice Larpenteur
Yeah.
for right-of-way trails and safety, what does that mean?
Yeah, so that means that that's in the works, and we're looking at doing community engagement on what people want to see there. So it hasn't been defined yet exactly, but we're working in 2023. We'll be looking at what people do want that north. It's a work in
Rice
progress, and
Street.
so in 2024. Oh, I'm
Talking
sorry.
about Rice Street north of Larpenteur?
North
and
of
then,
Larpenteur,
or
the north end of Rice
intersection?
and Larpenteur, right, the north end of Rice and Larpenteur, right. So it's, because they're working on Rice Street up to Larpenteur, and then we have the next project in 2023 will be north of Rice.
Okay, so community engagement will start this year
Yeah,
into next
it will start in '23, so anything physically to be done there will not be until 2024. We double-checked with our Public Works on this, and that's what they said. We're going to be looking for a lot of community engagement, working with Roseville, of course, and with Little Canada on that, on what people want to see happen on that road. So we'll stay tuned on that, and we are very much into our community engagement, making sure we're doing it that we engage the community before it's decided. You know, we're not going to go to them with a plan and then say, what do you think of it? We're going to say, what do you want the plan to look like? So you'll be early on in that process.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. HRA levy. I could spend a long time on this, so I've got some slides that are a bit detailed on this, and so I would say that I'll answer any questions that I can on this, but our department in this is willing to come back and do an entire workshop on HRA levy. This was passed in 2022, so that was the first year. It was passed in 2021. The first year was 2022 for this countywide levy that all of our cities, except for North St. Paul, except for now they've joined us. They've added themselves, I believe they voted on it to add themselves, but they were doing that about a month ago. So we believe we have every city now in Ramsey County that is participating in this levy. It really allows us to do projects, county, for the whole area, and that, and the participation of all of our cities will allow, all of you to then participate in that. So I'm going to show some slides about what that looks like, at least in the first year. So we all know that housing infrastructure is a priority for us. We wanted program to be more responsive and flexible, and the dollars from the levy will help us. We have a vibrant department now working on this, and we can make decisions on our own just within our county that we no longer have to rely solely on federal funding, and that the roadmap is really a combination and an overlap of programming and funding sources from a lot of different places, but the levy just adds a substantial amount to these projects that are happening throughout the county. So now I'll talk about the detail. We did ask for, the St. Paul asked for 50-50, and so did the suburbs, and that is what we're continually to focus on, and it actually happened the first year. There was about 50% spending. We knew that administration was monitored and limited to 10%, that it was going to go, 90% was going to go into the actual project, which it did. We have a whole economic competitiveness and inclusion plan, which we're happy to present in greater detail if you would like, at some later point. And the HRA levy increases annual taxes on a median value home by about $45. And this pooled all together, it really helps us do transformative work in the area of housing and economic development. So Here's the levy spending highlights that we allocated $77,500 for first-generation first home loans. So this actually is into Roseville. So that was put into that. And $50,000 was in critical corridor grants on County Road B in Snelling and the public realm at Rice and Larpenteur. So these are the highlights in 2022. The other chart shows that all funding sources, so that was just the levy, then all funding sources, which is from all the different, from mortgage assistance, critical corridors, renter occupied housing, first home, public services, public facilities. These are state programs, and then our own Ramsey County HRA levy. These are either state or federal programs or our own levy, and that's where the dollars went or came from in those, and was spent in those areas for those different programs. The spend profile was, these are the funding sources. This is just a different way to look at this, that countywide services were 118, just suburban was 214, and the direct spend was 3.2 million. So we have a lot of different sources, and it's going to different programs. I just wanted to show this slide because the city of St. Paul passed a resolution, as did most of my suburban communities were concerned, that they wanted it just that at least 50% needed to be in St. Paul, and all of the suburban communities felt the same way. So we were all on the same page on where the dollars were to go, and that is what happened this year. We're not sure it's going to always happen this way. Sometimes suburban Ramsey may get more, St. Paul may get less, but it will average out to, for sure, over a several year period to be 50-50. But this year it was.
So there's probably just a slight difference between the suburban communities and St. Paul, in that St.
Light.
Paul is saying at least 50% goes to St. Paul. And the
Yes.
suburban communities would probably argue that no more than
No
50%.
more than, right, exactly.
But that's splitting.
You're right, that could be, yes, you're right, Mayor Rowe. I show this just because I want to say that everybody really had the same goal in mind, that they wanted the dollars obviously allocated in their community, raised in your community and allocated in your community. And if you can pool it and it helps one part of the community more than the other one year, it'll help your part the next year. But definitely between suburban and city, I know. So we'll continue to watch this. We'll continue to get, as I said, I think that this is a great program, or that you would maybe want to have a workshop on and have our whole department come in and talk to you about all of this. But I know that you've been great at actually applying for some of these funds and really working with us to make sure that you're eligible to get as much as you can from these programs. And that's what our economic development department works on, is what project do you have, and how can we find you the funds for it? And that's their whole goal, is to work with you on that. So, and they work with your economic development person as well.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I think a part of the concern when the HRA levy was first sort of being undertaken or considered was this going to be something where the county was going to be doing projects and sort of running the show, or was it meant to be a support for projects that cities were already doing? And I think that it's proved out to be more of a support for those types of projects, and it definitely does help to fill gaps, for sure. So I think we appreciate that the county has taken that approach.
Yeah.
So I wanted to feed that back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That has absolutely been the goal that I've understood as well, and that our department has really said, we really listen to our cities. This is what they want. This is how we're going to help them get there. And we want what the cities want, in this regard. And we're there to help advise. And, we, of course, would let you know what we want, but it's definitely your decisions on what you go for. So, thanks. I'm not opposed to letting you know what I want, but you are doing such great work. I'm confident we're doing this. We're working for the same people, and we're representing the same people, and I believe we're on the same page on these issues. So, just some environmental activities which we're very excited about. The Ramsey County Environmental Services Center here in Roseville, going to be very close to us, 1700 Kent. This is at Dale and Larpenteur. We're very excited about this service center. I think in the next few years, it's a couple of years away, but we've had a lot of community engagement in this. I know that most of you have been a part of the meetings. We've had a lot of meetings in the community on this and have gotten some really good feedback on what people want there. One of my favorite things that we're all pushing for is a Fix-It clinic, a more regular Fix-It clinic, not just a Saturday in a library. This is going to be an ongoing where people can bring things that don't work. So instead of throwing them away, you can work with people that know how to fix things. So that's one of them. It's going to have an organics recycling there. It's going to have all of your hazardous waste. So it's really good. I don't know what that is. So, and also our food scraps collection network. I'm sure you've heard about this. I can go into greater detail on this, but this is where probably by 2024, I'm hoping by the end of 2023, all the pilots projects will be done. We're starting them right now. I wanted all my communities to be the pilot, but unfortunately it was a hauler kind of thing, and we will be, in the group, I think maybe toward the end of 2023, but it's where everyone gets a durable compostable bag and you put your organics in it and then you put it tie it up and put it in your garbage, and it's collected with your garbage, and then it's taken to the processing plant that Ramsey County, Washington County own together, and then it will be separated there, and then the organics will be used in composting, and hopefully we'll have an anaerobic digester in the next few years that will be using it for that. So we are very excited about this. 20 to 25% of our waste is food waste. So if we can pull it out of the waste stream, it makes the rest of the waste cleaner, and it just has that much more that we can reuse by pulling it out. So people are very excited about the food scraps collection, and you'll be hearing more about that as we move forward and Roseville becomes one of the cities. You'll hear lots more about that. Every household will get letters, you'll get bags, you'll get education. We'll be talking to you. The city will know. So that's all what we're going to be doing. And then we have a county climate action policy, which we're very excited about. And we're just in the process of formulating that. It's a huge issue for us, a priority issue for us. We know we want to work with our cities on that because I know we know that this is something that all of you think are important too. And so that's one of the goals, is to make sure that we can complement each other with the work that we're doing. Like, okay, we see something that can be done, and we want to work with you on that. So,
I'm going to back up to the food scrap.
oh, sure.
What are we doing with the restaurants? How do they play into that?
I love that question. We do work with a lot of restaurants on, and our schools to food waste to hogs program. And so we have a biz recycling program. So they work with the food, and they work with also, recycling waste as well, or recycling. Reusable recycling. And so we are just trying to get to as many of the businesses as we can. If you know of any restaurants that want to work with us, we do, like I said, have a really robust biz recycling department within our Ramsey Washington environmental group. And we hope that all of our restaurants will participate in it, but we don't have all of them yet. So it's an education, it's an outreach, it's a working with them and talking to them. And so we're very interested in that, and I think we're just continuing to push for more outreach, and because we know that we can help them with their food waste. So I think we show them how putting the food waste in a separate place really lowers their garbage costs, and so I'm happy to get you more of a percentage. I don't know how many we work with versus how many we should be working with. All I know is that we're continuing to do outreach on that, and we've talked to the Business Council. We've had biz recycling at the Roseville Business Council, which is another thing that I love to come attend is that. And so, but I think we're probably due again for the biz recycling to present to the Business Council again. But even if you have any ideas, or if you have any restaurants that you want to make sure we talk to, we're happy to go there. So thanks for the question. If any businesses are watching, please contact us. We can help you.
Right, and just to clarify, so the food scrap program is a residential program, though?
Yes.
So that, in other words, restaurants aren't going to be able to take their food scraps, put them in a really large durable bag.
Well, they might be able to. I hope
Okay.
so. Oh, I hope
But
so.
it's not necessarily part of the pilots that are being.
Yeah,
right?
you know, the food scraps is definitely a residential,
Mm-hmm.
this collection network, but I am, it's a great question. I'm hopeful and that that the businesses will be engaged in that as well. I mean, once
would
we have
probably
this
build on
collection.
the biz
I mean,
recycling side of it.
they use the same garbage pickup that everyone else does, so we will be sending them really big bags to put their organic food waste in. Yeah, no, I'm confident that as we in each home will be doing this, that they should be doing the same thing with the large bags.
Well, it seemed like the schools in White Bear had a real successful project to the hog
Yeah.
side of it. And so maybe something like that could be expanded for the businesses as well. So who knows? Because it's really interesting to see how the schools have been doing that. It's working well, they say. So
Yes, thank you for bringing that
They
up.
actually
Yes.
come and pick it up and take it to the hogs to be fed with the scraps directly instead of going anywhere
Anywhere,
else.
right.
So it works well for them.
I was just at we have a partnership with Washington County, so it's the Ramsey Washington, Recycling and Energy Board. And I just asked that question, like, how are we doing with food to hogs in our schools, and in our restaurants? And they said, well, we're working with them. Some schools do food to hogs, some schools do something else. So they're working with them, and they're really trying to make sure that they reuse or, get those food scraps into a reusable place. So I said, well, just keep working with all those schools. So I know that some of our schools are using it and some of them are using other methods. But yes, we need to keep making sure that they're doing that. So, and like I said, and then the climate action, right, we're working with that. I know the Ramsey County League of Local Governments is probably going to take that on as one of their collective action groups, where I think it's being proposed. I won't say that it's approved by now, but it's, I'm on the collective action work group, and we recommended that climate action be the collective action theme. It was mental health for the last few years, and now Ramsey County League, we're asking that it be climate action, because so many cities are interested in an action policy and are working on it, that we could all learn from each other on that. And Ramsey County is poised to present at least what we're doing so far on it, that you're all welcome to, of course, use, contribute to, expand on what we're doing. So. Other items of interest, I mean, this is other things that we're working on together, our embedded social worker program, which we really appreciate the partnership with Roseville on that. We know that we hear that it's successful. We are giving it some time before we do a formal evaluation, but we're very interested in, of course, partnering with our communities on embedded social workers. Of course, we love the Rice-Larpenteur Alliance, and we love that we partner as we have a regional park at Lake McCarran's Lake, but we love that Roseville Parks does some programming there. So anytime that we can partner with our cities, we appreciate that, and we love that Rice-Larpenteur is 3 cities and 1 county, and that we have such great support from Roseville on that, and it's a great alliance. And so I'm just reiterating our partnership with our Community and Economic Development Department, our Public Works, and Social Services, that all of these areas, our staff works together, and I know your city manager works with or has met with our county manager, hopefully meets periodically, regularly, to learn from each other and how we can work more, how we can work together even more. So thank you so much for listening. I want to be here to just make sure that the county is doing everything we can to be good partners with you. And thank you all again for all of your great work as a city. I'm proud to be a resident of Roseville, and glad to be a resident of Roseville.
All right, well, thank you for that information this evening. Very helpful and informative, and hopefully likewise for the rest of the community.
Yeah.
I think we might have some questions. Councilmember Atten.
I think you can just say you're proud to be a resident of Roseville. You don't
yeah.
have to couch that. Glad.
Yeah. Okay, great.
I appreciate some of these partnerships. I think that is a clear shift that's happened the last few years. We had little shifts, and there's a much bigger shift. An example would be the pathway funding, that 10 years ago, there was no pathway funding from Ramsey County on their own right-of-way, and we were doing it ourselves if anything was happening. Then there was some, and now there seems to be more and more support and even leadership on your own sidewalk building on county right-of-way, and I think that's a really important part of building our community, and we appreciate that type of investment. You listed other ones, but it's an example of something that's grown over time, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate that. I know when I first got elected to the county board and you wanted us to move the Ramsey County Library right-of-way so that we could have a driveway that was much more aligned to the road. And I would tell my public works after a year, I think, of us trying, or more than that. I mean, you had tried for a long time. I said, I'm not going back to Roseville until you tell me we're going to get that done. And we did have new people. I mean, we had some new players and people, and Roseville was a great partner. We got our people on board, and I'm just so grateful that we did stuff like that. And I'm glad to hear, yes, the message coming from all of the commissioners, quite frankly, is to our departments, is let's make this work. Make it work with our cities. So thank you. I'm glad it's working on the sidewalks too. That's another area that we get a lot. We get a lot of requests for sidewalks and crosswalks, and we know we need to work with our communities on those. So keep doing that.
All right, other questions? Councilmember Groff?
It's not so much a question as just a thank you for working with the 87 counties, because so often everything gets divided up between metro and non-metro, and then you can't get anything done at the legislature. So it's really good that you could find common ground with everybody in the state, and I know you worked hard on that, so I just appreciate it.
I appreciate that. We tell our rural colleagues, you've got to, they agree with us on all these. I said, okay, you got to tell your legislators that this is really important to you, and that we're finding that that's, it's moving us forward more, and we still need to continue to work on it. But thanks, yeah, we're working really hard on that. So thanks.
Councilmember Schroeder?
I wanted to thank you for all your work you're doing with the Rice Larpenter Alliance, not just from the county, but yourself personally. I know you show up for all those events, and I greatly appreciate, all the effort in that, because that is an area and a project that needed to be done for so long, and now it's getting some traction. So again, thank you for doing that.
Well, my goal is to be there as often as all of you are there. Every time I go, I see all of, mayor, city council. I'm like, okay. So I appreciate that, Councilmember Schroeder, and I love that area, and I know that all of you are so dedicated to it as well. It's why it's working. So thank you.
Councilmember Strong?
I'd just like to add thanks, of course, for the workforce contribution. You didn't touch on that very much, but as someone who works in the workforce field, I regularly feel honored that we have so many resources that some of the other communities don't have to offer. So keep up the good work. Don't ever let Ling leave, but because she has such great people who work for her, not just because she's amazing, but because she brings great resources with her. And so, but I really appreciate being able to look to my own county as kind of a model.
I thank you, Councilmember Strand. Yes, Director Lingbecker is an amazing rock star in our county. We have a number of them. I would say Carrie Collins from Roseville is another one. We have great, amazing directors in our departments. Ling, as you mentioned, is just doing such innovative and creative work with the workforce. She's really partnering, making sure that we have our high schools working with our employers to make sure that they have, that there's a pathway for kids to have work when they get out of, even before they get to college, but while they're, so that they can go to a trade school or a college to get the training they need to have a job when they get back. And she is doing amazing work with, just creative programs. And we're featuring her, I'm having a national board meeting in December. We're featuring some of the work that she's doing on workforce because it's so innovative and creative, and working with 3M. And she's got really great public-private partnerships going on that are really taking the burden off some of the public sector, because the private sector, of course, needs this. So they're really working with us on that. So thank you for recognizing it. I need to put some more of that in my presentation. Thank you for that. I was like, what do I want to talk about? But definitely I should be talking about that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, you want to make sure that the commissioner that covers Vadnais Heights definitely has it in there, because that's really
I know, and we are doing everything, yes, we definitely appreciate Lane Becker and hope that she stays with us for a very long time.
Great. Other questions or feedback from council members? Well, thank you again for being with us this evening and getting us up to date on what's going on with the county and sharing and reminding us and our mutual constituents of all the work that both the city and the county do together across a whole host of areas that impacts their lives. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks all of you for all your good work. Do you want me to get out of
I
here?
think we can,
Can you get?
Just hit escape.
Oh, and then one more time. Nope.
and then they'll
You're good.
they'll shut down the screen there. So you're all set.
Thank you so much.
All right. With that, then our next agenda item is a joint meeting with our Police Civil Service Commission. And so I'll ask a representative or representatives from the Police Civil Service Commission kind of come up to the table and join us.
No choice.
You pull your gun and make us come up that way at every other meeting.
For moral support, right?
Yes.
Hello and welcome.
Good evening.
The microphone is yours, so whoever is speaking for the commission,
You
and
see, we've spent hours.
maybe you could start with introductions.
I will start with introductions. Thank you for having us here tonight. It's been a little bit of time since we've had our Police Civil Service Commission come before the council, just with COVID and everything that's happened the last couple of years. But we've got our chair here today, Bob Murphy, who's going to kind of do a quick overview. And then we also have Shauna Dees from the commission as well. Unfortunately, our other member, Kathleen, really was unable to make it due to a last-minute emergency. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bob to just kind of give an overview of what the Civil Service Commission has been busy doing the last year or last couple of years.
That our charter is rather limited, and it's hard when you're have civil service in your commission name to have vim and vigor launching forward. But to see that the police department's initial hiring, promotion, and anything later in the career are done in a reasonable fashion that's well-defined, serves the officers, and serves the community. So a great deal of our time when we meet is spent going over eligibility lists for candidates that have been interviewed for initial hire, lateral hire, or promotions. And chief staff has been good enough to enable us to sit in on these meetings when we choose. So it's very interesting to be able to see firsthand the questions that are asked and the answers officers go through. So we're a little bit different than other commissions. We meet on an as-needed basis. State law requires us to meet once a year in February, and that's usually after appointments are made. But for Roseville, we don't do those, so we're a little bit out of line. We do have a member of the Police Civil Service Commission on the Ethics Commission also. And you were most recent star before this
As the most
group
recent
back in
hire
March.
appointee, yes.
So, small group, 3 members that we happened to notice when looking over our rules and procedures document that it had a 2011 date on it, and decided it was probably time to knock some dust off of that and at least review it to see. And we found a few things in there, and that the chief took the task to present those to our new city attorney, and I think we're probably one meeting away from having an update to that. Nothing earth-shattering, but thought after a decade it was time to go through and at least put the revision date up to date on there. Shauna, anything?
No.
So the year's work plan is very simple, do more of the same. So it's really, whenever the chief staff has another candidate or a list of candidates to certify and to go forward. We fortunately haven't had anything on the suspension, demotion, layoff list, Nor do we think we'll probably ever see any reduction in force in the near future. And three of us have grown for deep appreciation on the difficulty of hiring and retaining officers in today's environment.
All right.
Shauna?
Being able to hear from the chief and deputy chief just of the struggles and challenges that the department faces from where they were years ago of having hundreds of candidates for positions to having just a few. It's been interesting being on the commission to hear what the department has gone through. So to be able to be there and just support them by just approving their hire list.
All right, thank you. Are there questions or feedback for the commission from council members?
No.
Other than saying, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, do it again.
We do appreciate that, and we understand it's statutorily obligated, but at the same time, it is important, and we want to make sure that we do dust things off every once in a while and make sure that we're keeping up to date on our practices and those sorts of things, which is an important role for the commission as well. And anytime there's things that we need to change from a policy point of view at the council level, please be sure to bring those forward.
And we thought 3 used squad cars for getting around town would really be a nice perk.
I'm having trouble hearing.
We went over that in ethics. I don't think we can do that, so.
No,
Right, city
to and from meetings.
You can totally do that.
So,
All right, well, thank you again. We appreciate all the work that you do and your service to the community.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening, even if it happens to be spent here. All right. That brings us then to our next item on the business items this evening, which is item 7C, which is to receive our annual comprehensive financial report, the auditor communication letter, and reports on compliance for fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022. And I believe we have a bit of an introduction this evening to be made, or a self-introduction, Mr. Trudgeon.
So, Mayor and members of the council, I first of all want to formally introduce Joshua Kent, our Assistant Finance Director. Some of you may have met him over the time period. I think I just learned before the meeting, 2 weeks short of being here for a year, so shame on us for not bringing him forward more formally. Josh came from us from Anoka County and has been a really valuable addition, and we really appreciate his work. So he is going to introduce our auditor, Rebecca, here, and I'll just turn it over to him. Welcome.
Thank you, City Manager Trudgeon, and Mayor Rowe, council members. It's a great opportunity to be employed here in the city of Roseville. Just under a year. It's been a great experience. It's been a learning experience coming from the county over to the city as well. There's a lot of overlap there, but of course, going somewhere new, you're always learning new processes along the way as well. And with that, one of the things that really excite me is audit time and putting together the financial reports. So with that, we can go ahead and take the spotlight off of me and turn it over to Rebecca Peterson, the director from Red Path, who oversaw our audit this year for 2022 financials.
Probably the only person in this room more excited about audits.
Very, very possible.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me here again this year. My goal tonight is to just briefly give you an overview of the reports we issue in conjunction with the audit, and then a high-level financial summary. But as I talk through this, we work closely with city staff during the audit, but we do work for the council. So please feel free to interrupt me as I'm talking if you have questions or want me to elaborate on any specific area. This year, there are 5 reports that we issued in conjunction with the audit. The first one is an opinion on the financial statements. And this is really the primary purpose of our audit and what you hire us for. City staff prepare the annual financial statements, and it's our job as auditors to audit them and provide reasonable but not absolute assurance on the fair presentation of the statements. During the course of our audit, it would be cost prohibitive for us to look at every transaction, and really, from a time perspective, not possible. And so during the audit, we look at a sample of transactions, we look at the financial statements as a whole, and provide an opinion on their fair and reasonable presentation, that they're materially fairly stated. And the results of that part of the audit this year is that you have a clean, unmodified opinion, which is the result you want. That is the highest level of assurance we can provide on the financial statements. And so from your perspective, the city staff did what they needed to do to produce clean financial statements this year. Along with that, on an annual basis, the city submits the financial statements to the GFOA, the Government Finances Officers Association, to apply for a financial reporting award. The 2021 financial statements just received the award. They've been a little bit backed up, so we're well into 2023, but the award for 2021 was just awarded to the city, which is great news, and I believe the city will be submitting for the 2022 award as well. The second report that we issue in conjunction with the audit is a report on internal controls. During the course of the audit, we don't audit the city's internal controls, but we do gain an understanding of the controls that the city has in place. And if we identify areas where there's potential for improvement or where controls aren't functioning as designed, we will report that to you. This year, there was one item identified during the course of our audit that rose to the level of something that we would report to the council, on a day-to-day basis as we work with the city. Sometimes we come across minor issues that we just discuss at a management level. But one item this year that was significant enough to report to the council, and that related to financial statement adjustments. During the course of the audit, we identified an adjustment to license center cash and related transactions that ended up changing materially the numbers in the financial statements from the statements that the city staff had originally prepared. And anytime that we have an adjustment to cash, I want to make sure I reassure you that there was no cash missing. We did not identify any cash that was misappropriated or anything. It was merely a matter of how it was recorded in the city's ledger. So no concerns as far as existence of cash, just recording of certain transactions. And our understanding is that some of the turnover in the finance department over the course of the last year resulted in a process that kind of went under the radar a little bit, and city staff has taken steps to correct that. As far as audit findings go, this is one that is not very concerning. It's something we need to report to you and want to make sure you're aware of, but nothing I would lose sleep over.
And that was corrected going forward on how they are going to make sure that doesn't happen again, correct?
That is correct. Yep, we identified the issue, and it's already been corrected on a monthly journal entry going forward, so
Okay.
we should be good.
The third report that we issue in conjunction with the audit is a report on legal compliance. The Office of the State Auditor has a series of checklists and reporting requirements that they like us to maintain an awareness of as we work through the audit. We're not attorneys, and so we're not providing an opinion on legal compliance, but just from an accounting perspective, certain areas that might come to our attention during the course of the audit. The results this year are that no instances of noncompliance were identified that rose to the level of reporting. Again, sometimes on a day-to-day basis, we identify processes for improvement, but nothing that warranted reporting in a formal report. So again, this is the result you want, which is great news. The next report that we issue in conjunction with the audit is a report on federal program compliance. And this is sometimes referred to as the single audit. And it's a compliance audit that the city is not subject to every year. It's only subject to the compliance audit if you expend more than $750,000 of federal funds in a given year. This year with the ARPA funding that the city spent, it pushed you above the threshold, so you had to undergo a federal compliance audit. There were no question costs during the course of the audit and no instances of noncompliance identified. And that's great news. The federal compliance audits have a lower threshold for reporting items that we identify over the course of the audit. So it really is notable to city staff that nothing was identified this year. The final report that we issue in conjunction with the audit is really a letter from us as the auditors to you as governance, identifying key pieces of information that may be significant to you. We issued a formal letter, and most of it is standard required language, so I tried to pull out the significant items within the letter. The first one that's called out within the letter is that the city implemented a new accounting standard this year. There's a standard that's been talked about for a number of years. If you recall past audit presentations, it's called GASB 87, and it relates to how the city has to account for leases within its financial statements. So that's been applied to the 2022 financial statements, and if you were to compare the 2021 statements to the 2022 statements, you would see some differences there. Had some significant number changes, but from a day-to-day impact, no real significant changes. We also want to identify that the financial statements contain estimates. Not just these two items, but these two items are the items that I would consider most significant within the financial statements. The first one bulleted here is the net pension liability. And what this reflects is the state's para retirement pension plan. This is the city's share of para's pension liability. Para is responsible for administering the plan, but the theory is that if para was ever not able to meet their obligations, they would come looking to participating employers to help them meet those pension obligations. And as of the measurement date for the end of 2022, Roseville's share of that pension liability was almost $39 million. That is a significant increase from last year. Most of the local governments that I'm working with here are seeing increases of up to 400% in that pension liability from last year, primarily as a result of poor investment performance over the course of 2022 for para. So I imagine if the economy improves that pension liability will decrease a little bit. But just know, if you looked at your financial statements from last year to this year, you would see that big number, and that's why. That's what that significant change is from. The other significant estimate within the financial statements looks small in comparison, but it's the OPEB liability. That stands for other post-employment benefits, and it's just post-employment retirement benefits that city staff are able to take advantage of just by the fact that they work for a public entity, ability to stay on city's health insurance and whatnot. And that's an actuarially determined number. During the course of the audit, we had no disagreements with management. No difficulties encountered in performing the audit. And then just a couple other matters I'd want to draw to your attention. The first one is the special item disclosure. There's a new footnote within this year's financial statements entitled Special Item, and it just relates to the disposal of IT operations that rolled over to Metro INET. That's called out separately in the city's financial statements because it's a one-time transaction. The other item I have bulleted here, the market value adjustment. If you read the written letter, it's not included in there because it didn't really fall into one of the categories that we normally discuss, but it's significant enough that I wanted to mention it during our conversation tonight. If you look at the city's financial statements, you will see a market value adjustment related to investments of over $5 million reflected as a loss. And what that relates to is, again, poor investment performance, that the city is required to recognize changes in market value as it occurs. And so those investments, the city has not lost money. Investments did not go away. If the city holds those investments to maturity, that loss will reverse itself. You're just required to show the market value adjustment at year end. And it's such a significant number, I wanted to make sure council was aware that the city didn't lose $5 million. It's just a timing difference. Overall, for the city's governmental funds, here's a high-level overview of how they performed over the course of 2022. And if you look, at the general fund, that $1.6 million in fund balance, and some of the other governmental funds, when you think about that significant market value loss that we had this year, that is good performance in comparison, despite the reduction there. The next slide, I have general fund budget to actual performance. Again, at a high level, revenues were under budget primarily because of that market value adjustment, but still ending the year in a healthy position. And you can see here, the city, as I'm sure you're aware, has reserve policies for the general fund balance. And the way that the general fund is grouped in the financial statements is maybe a little bit different than you hear from the finance department on a day-to-day basis. But when we present in the financial statements, the reserve amounts, we present in accordance with how they show in the financial statements. And the working capital percentage this year is just under 40% at 39.2%, which is well within the city's reserve policy. The next slide here I have is governmental funds revenue. This is a slide we haven't presented in prior years. I added it at a request to have some governmental fund historical perspective. As we get further in the presentation, we'll look at some of the city's business type funds and some trend information there. Governmental funds don't lend themselves well to operational trend information. So what I have shown here is revenue by source or type over time. And why I think this is impactful this year, if you look at the green bar, that green bar within the graph represents intergovernmental revenue. And so if you look at the types of revenue that are funding city operations over time, you can see that in 2022, that intergovernmental revenue really had a significant uptick. There was some public safety funding going in there as well as the ARPA funding that's really helping absorb some city costs. Next, I have the Water Utility Fund. Our green line here is operating revenue, and the blue bars are operating expenses. And I understand the city is working with Ellers to keep an eye on utility rates and make sure that you're funding costs here. But the operating revenue is over time above operating expenses as a whole, which is really what you need to see. Water fund cash flows, you can see in 2022, operating activities used more cash than it brought in, as did capital activities. At the end of the year, the fund, as far as an operating cash perspective, was down to zero, which it does happen from time to time, but I believe the utility rate study is working to address that so that over time it stays above zero. Next up, I have the sanitary sewer utility. Again, that green line is your operating revenue, and the bars are your expenses. Here you can see your operating revenue is well above your operating expenses, and that's really what you want to see. That gap in there, you need that gap in order to cover capital and infrastructure improvements. It's expensive to run water and sewer systems, and so you need to make sure you have those savings to cover those future improvements. Next up, we have the golf course. The green bar is your operating revenue. The light blue bar is your operating expenses, and then the red portion is depreciation expense, just the recognition of impairment of assets over time. Recreational facilities are notorious for not covering their operations with their revenue. And so the fact that your green line, your operating revenue, the past couple of years has covered your operating expenses is a great position to be in. It's not unusual for recreational facilities to not be able to do that. Finally, I have storm drainage, and you can see your operating revenue, again, is above your operating expenses at a level where you want it to be. That one blip back in 2020 relates to some developer contributions that were one-time activity. And solid waste recycling. Our green line here is our operating revenue. The purple line is operating revenue plus grants. On an annual basis, the city receives some grant funding to help fund recycling operations. As you can see this year, you really needed that grant in order to cover your operating expenses. As you may note, the operating expenses for 2022 are significantly higher than prior years, and that's due to the contract renegotiation that happened in 2022. So that's all the information I have pre-prepared for you tonight, but happy to answer any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you for your presentation. Are there questions from the council for our auditor or staff? Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, and I actually too get excited about audits, so I understand. I'm just curious with the billing issue for the water. Do you consider that a material issue, considering part of it was in 2021?
Yep, that's definitely something we discussed during the audit. And when we look at that, we look at internal controls from a perspective of, can they prevent or detect errors? And so clearly the billing issue was not prevented, but it was eventually detected. And from a material perspective, when we look at the financial reporting requirements, it didn't result in a material misstatement. And so from an audit perspective, no, it didn't rise to the level of a reportable condition, but it was something that we talked about during the course of the audit. And in the letter that you would have received at the beginning of the audit, I wouldn't have expected anybody to remember what was included in there, but one of the areas that was identified as a risk was revenue recognition, and it really does relate to that billing issue. So it did get audit attention during the course of the audit.
And did that also come up in internal control questions
Yeah,
as well?
most definitely. We did some additional procedures this year in relation to it.
And of course, I haven't had a chance to go through the audit, which I'm sure I'll have some follow-up questions. But I'm assuming that both of that's reflected in the audit somewhere under a note or something?
No, it's not reported, it didn't meet the criteria for reporting in the current year.
So, okay, there's no note in there
No,
anywhere?
there's not.
Okay, okay.
Councilmember Hatton?
I think it's curious how that all works out and what you report and what's required, and that's a thing. When we look at the internal detection, you said, hey, it wasn't caught in 21, it was caught in 22, but it wasn't caught by us. It's caught by an outside company looking at
Yep.
our stuff. So I wonder how that falls in a report like this.
Yep.
It wasn't our internal controls that identified this problem.
It was, I definitely understand that perspective. The city engages professional consultants to help in certain ways. And so I guess from our perspective, sometimes you have the internal capacity to do certain things, and sometimes you hire consultants for that. And so, yes, city staff didn't identify it right away, but it was identified through the processes that city staff initiated.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions for the auditor or staff? Councilmember Schroeder?
So if we have questions on this audit,
Yep.
should we go through our finance person, or do we go to you direct, or how would that work?
I'm happy to stand for questions. Maybe start with Michelle and Josh, especially for numbers information, and they can send you my way if there's something that they can't answer, or if you want my perspective. You certainly can contact me directly. Like I said, I work for the council, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you have directly as well.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And just one final thing on the water billing matter. One of the things as an auditor is that you're making sure that the financial statements reflect actual situations.
actually happened,
And
correct.
certainly we did reflect accurately how much we took in and how much we spent. We just had the other issue with, dealing with how we were doing that.
Yep,
So, yeah,
yep.
yeah. So just wanted to make sure that the numbers that are reflected in the statements are the correct numbers.
Correct.
So, yeah, okay.
We-
No, go ahead.
I was, during the course of the audit, we did spend time making sure that governmental accounting standards dictate how revenue is recognized, and we made sure that those adjustments to the water bills were recognized in accordance with governmental accounting standards. And so they are recognized in the proper period, which means that there's no material misstatement within the financial statements.
Thank you for clarifying that. Right, if there aren't other questions from the council, maybe stand by. We do have a member of the public who wishes to address the council on this item, so free up a microphone for him. And once again, we just remind that the comments or questions be directed at the city council, and if we need to follow up with the staff or the auditor, we can certainly do that on
Right.
your behalf.
So, Roger Hess, Wagner Place. So I'm wondering, so we have, I assume, about $50 million in investments. Is that typical for a city of our size? And my other question is the rate of return we're getting on that greater than what we're paying out in interest on the outstanding bonds? And you guys already asked about the water, which I had questions about that, why it wasn't in part of the report, but I guess it doesn't need to be there. So I guess my only other question is, are the internal controls good enough that if $500,000 or $800,000 is missing from a fund that we know that? Because I assume at the beginning of the year, you project what the balance is going to be at the end of the year. And so I assume in 2021, the balance at the end of the year was nowhere near what it was projected at the beginning of the year. So I would think someone would have wondered at the end of 2021, why are we off? It must have been $500,000-$600,000 you're off by. And I assume that you guys project ahead of that kind of thing, and that nobody mentioned it. Just seems kind of odd. So I guess my questions are about the investments, the return, and the bonds. And the other question is, are the internal controls good enough that if $500,000 went out of any fund, would we know about it? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hess. All right, I'll ask perhaps staff to help us understand those. So the first question is the level of investment that the city has in terms of the $50 million. Is that typical of cities? And I imagine there has to be some accounting for the size of the city or those sorts of things. The second is, does our return on our investments cover the cost we pay in interest on our indebtedness through bonding? And then the question about the internal controls being adequate to find those types of shortfalls in revenues in any given fund of the magnitude that we saw in the water fund. Ms. Petrick, our finance director.
With regard to investments, we have cash and investments. We have an overnight sweep account for our checking account. So every night, cash is swept out of our checking account into an investment, a mutual fund. So we earn interest on absolutely everything we have. And with regard to the earnings, the valuation is as of a point in time, which was December 31st, which resulted in an unrealized loss. We hold investments till they mature. Our annual performance, we have benchmarks at a 5-year treasury and a 10-year treasury. We were trending below that treasury mark as of year end. As investments mature, now that the yield curve on the short term has grown significantly, we are rolling investments into shorter term investments to gain yield, and also to position ourselves going forward. So if the market changes, we can gain yield on our investments. With regard to whether our earnings exceed our bond interest rate, as of 12/31/2022, no. The bond interest rate was higher than our investment earnings. If you ask me as of March 31st, 2023, the answer would have been yes, we were earning more because the market had changed so drastically. It changes on a daily basis and a weekly basis. So unfortunately, we're required to take a point in time and evaluate our investment portfolio to what the market's doing at that particular day in time. With regard to the underbilling in the water fund, 2021 was the first year that we enacted tiered water rates. At the end of 2021, keeping in mind tiered rates, we had a drought, revenues were not coming in where I anticipated they should be, so I was concerned, were tiered rates working correctly or was something else in play? I would not normally do a reevaluation of a rate study in 2 years. St. Paul Regional Water does theirs every 5 years. We did ask Ellers to come back and reevaluate the rates to make sure they were working correctly. We were working through a number of analyzing commercial accounts, residential accounts, and we collectively came to the conclusion something was not right. And our consultant said, really, you need to look at the residential and commercial. Something's not working correctly. As soon as we were notified, I worked with my utility billing staff to try and figure out why are the rates, the tiered rates not working correctly. And that's when we identified the problem in the computer system. That's been corrected. Our staff have spent numerous hours calculating bills to make sure they are working correctly. When the new rates went into effect in 2023, we evaluated a sampling of all utility bills. And we continue to do so. And we are hopeful that with the new financial system that we are putting in, that setting up utility rates is not as cumbersome as it is in our current system. But to answer the question, we noticed that something was not correct. We didn't know what, but our revenues were not coming in near where we anticipated. that is part of what the finance department does, is look at fluctuations and performance throughout the year. We provide you quarterly statements, which are snapshot and at a summary level. And if we have concerns, we will definitely bring it to your attention. But we were anticipating higher revenues. And again, you shouldn't have to do an update in a utility study in 2 years. And because we did have the issue, we will likely have Ellers come in 2 years again, so you have a comfort level that everything is correct. And not just me saying it's correct. So.
Thank you. I did want to, I think one of the questions was just the level of funds invested on behalf of the city. Is that, for lack of a better word, typical for cities? I know we have a significant amount of money that we set aside for future capital needs, which may not correspond with a lot of cities, but perhaps you can speak in your experience having served a number of cities and certainly associating with other financial professionals across the marketplace, so to speak.
It's actually pretty common. Several cities that I know of actually have higher reserve levels than Roseville does. So they actually have more investments. Again, we do invest everything that we possibly can, which is not uncommon as well. Most cities do have overnight sweeps because we're the people that will bend down and pick up pennies. So we're in keeping with other cities. We have reserve policies for every fund, which we need those reserves because we won't see taxes come in until June. So the cash that we have on hand at the end of the year has to carry us until taxes come in.
And then, of course, those set-asides for capital
Yep.
needs. The other thing I just wanted to clarify, too, in terms of the comparison of investment return on the various funds and the money that we're paying in terms of interest on our bonds, they're sort of apples and oranges
Right.
from my understanding, because we have committed funding through either our property tax or specific revenue to pay the interest on those bonds. And so it really isn't a function of, I mean, it's an interesting comparison, but it isn't necessarily a function of not being able to pay our interest as a result of not making as much on our investments.
Correct.
Because they're two different sort of pots.
Yes, I've been asked that question in the past, in my former lives. Why are you issuing debt? Why don't you just use your cash when interest rates are low? The problem that you run into is that you're using today's resources for a long-term asset, an asset that is going to benefit the citizens for the next 20 or more years. So you're using a limited resource, which is your cash, to pay for your house or your water system, which is going to last significantly longer. So I get asked to, the investments versus the debt, but they're really two separate things. With debt issuance, what you're trying to do is finance a project and match the debt service expenditures over part of the life of the asset. And it's not about how much you can make on your cash, it's more spreading the expense at the lowest interest rate possible over the benefited period.
Thank you. Well, Ms. Petrick is here. Were there other questions or follow-up from council members?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you again for answering those questions. Great. We are asked to accept the annual financial report, and so that would be the requested action from the council at this time, unless there's other discussion or questions. Is there a motion to accept the
I'll move to accept the
2022?
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Graff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn to accept the 2022 financial report. With that, is there any discussion on the motion?
Nope.
No.
Right, we've had a lot of discussion already at this point. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That financial information is accepted. Thank you, and appreciate the presentation this evening and answering the questions in a very informative manner. That brings us to a related conversation, budget-related. Believe it or not, this early in the, I guess it's not even that early in the year anymore. We are talking about the budget process for 2024, and we've got a request to consider the budget calendar for the 2024 budget over the course of this year, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this schedule is pretty much following what we have done in the past as far as the dates, just lining them up with the calendar a little bit better here. So we wanted to be here tonight to establish the calendar. We will come back on the June 20th meeting, talk about city council priorities as we head into the budgeting process and any legislative impacts. And I can guarantee you there's legislative impacts in this session that are going to be in our budget. So most years we don't have much of a conversation about that, but this year we will. On July 17th, we'll plan on presenting the capital improvement plan, and also at the same meeting as EDA, talk about the budget and tax levy on that. We'll receive the city manager budget, my budget, on August 21st. We used to do that a little bit earlier, but we moved that back a couple of years ago to give more time to present that and prepare that. And then look to have the Finance Commission, and the following page of the report is some dates when they're going to be talking about the budget and the budget impacts and CIP. Receive their recommendation, and then on September 25th, which is our last meeting in September, to pass a not to exceed a levy and budget. Very familiar for those who've been on the council for a while. This is something that we can, the maximum amount that we would consider as a budget and tax levy, but we can go down from that. Then follow that up about some discussions about the EDA levy, utility rates and fee schedule, all ending on the 4th of December to approve all those items. I will say that staff is already very actively working on budgets on a department level and on the CIP. Those are being submitted. We are working on our budget priorities as well as a department head leadership team, and we'll continue to work behind the scenes on that. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes you're not seeing right now, but the first touch you will have to talk about the budget process in general will be at our June 20th meeting. So, as I said, pretty standard for what we typically do on a year-to-year basis, but just wanted to lay that out for you, and if you have any questions or conversations, I'll be happy to take it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Is it possible to get the schedule calendar up on the screen for?
We would have to pull that up on here. I don't have a hard copy of it anymore.
We may be in luck. It's always helpful for folks that are watching at home if they have the ability to see what we're referring to. We may have to do some zooming.
There, let's see. How do we zoom in?
There should be a zoom in button there.
Point it up.
Point at the receiver up there.
It's up above your head.
Oh,
There we go. And it'll focus once we get it kind of centered on the screen.
So that's the calendar I just went over. Apologies, I didn't show it.
No, I appreciate that. It just, once again, it's sometimes helpful for people who can't remember all the things that were just listed in a list that's been made. Are there questions from the council on the proposed schedule? Once again, it was noted it's very similar, if not the same, as past schedules.
No, thank you.
I think the only thing I would note is that sometimes that June sort of legislative update timeframe, we also get some preliminary information from the Ramsey County Assessor's Office. Obviously, subject to changes over the course of the year. Is there any plan to kind of provide?
Yeah, we'll try to provide what we can. The counties change in how they present the information and give it to us, so we don't really get that really detailed information until August. So unfortunately, it's been a challenge. We keep on pushing to get as much information as possible, and we'll try to provide. We got some preliminary numbers.
yeah, we'll be able to provide some preliminary numbers. The problem that we're going to run into with the August 21st presentation, in the past, we used to get the market valuation, which we need to figure out our tax rate. We used to get that by the middle of August, and last year I did an estimate. I'm not going to do an estimate this year, so the county didn't get it to us until 1st of September. last year, so.
What we do have earlier in the year is the county's, like the change in the median
Yes.
value for
Yes.
residential homes and the commercial tax base change. If those types
Yeah.
of things that are available early in the year can be provided to us, then we can at least have that information.
Yeah, we'll be able to provide that at the June 20th.
Great.
Which will be the high-level changes, but definitely the median value.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Thanks. Councilmember Strawn.
I have a question. By the time we hit that November 27th, that final budget hearing, people who come, they're a little bit frustrated at our lack of excitement at that point. We've seen it so many times, and it's newer to them, and they're frustrated, I think, that there's not a lot of changes that can happen at that point. It's pretty much just kind of a rubber stamp. Is there a time where there would be impactful input earlier in the process? And that's kind of leads to that next agenda item, but that seems to be one of the areas that if people really thought we were considering what they wanted, they need to know about it well before November.
So I will just partially respond. I understand the question and the importance of that. So what we have tried to do over the years is once the city manager budget's released and presented to the council, we've publicized that as much as possible through our website and through our newsletter. And in the past, we've asked through the newsletter for people to provide comment in written form to the city council. And that's up and down as far as, any interaction, and that's just one form of interaction. And certainly as we have these meeting dates, there's always an opportunity for public comment. But I understand your question about directly engaging with them about the budget itself and what's in the budget and what the costs are around that. So we try to do that through the newsletter, but I'm not sure that's always been, we've received a lot of returns on that. And then certainly people do come maybe later in the process, and to your point, it's kind of baked in already since the council's seen it already and understands some of that. But that's what we've done in the past, just to give context.
Thanks.
One point to add to that, that November 27th meeting, we can't legally hold a truth and taxation hearing before November 25th.
State law, right?
By state law.
For that specific purpose.
Yeah, and there are a lot of cities that actually don't hold them anymore. They do the December meeting, and then if there's major changes, they hold a second December meeting. So Roseville has done the truth and taxation and then adopting the levy at a different meeting.
And I think one of the challenges we face, just to the Councilmember Strawn's point, is that a lot of what gets people to the November 27th meeting is that they get their tax notice from the county, and that has that date on it, and it's got a number as to what they're going to have to pay in the following year. And we really don't know those things because under state law, this county is only obligated to provide it, and it's probably only ever going to provide it statutorily at the last possible moment, which is when they mail those notices out to people. So we're a little bit at the mercy of people. People's interest level is always the highest when they see how it's going to impact their finances. And unfortunately, we don't have a way to necessarily reflect that early in the process, although as part of the city manager's recommended budget, there is that estimate of the impact on the average taxpayer, so that helps that. I think that type of information can be helpful. I've often wondered if there's a way we can have on our website sort of my tax collector feature that people could actually take their home value and figure out what their tax change would be, at least in some sort of round estimated fashion with all kinds of qualifiers around it to help them understand that earlier in the process. I don't know if that's, if it's something we can do, and B, if we can do it, if it's super expensive and makes no sense to spend money on it or whatever, but maybe that's something that can help that. But I think we should try to encourage people's involvement as much as possible throughout the process. But the practical matter is that usually what gets people engaged is when they see how big a check they're going to have to write, or how big of a check it's going to come out of their escrow. And I'll just say, from a historical perspective, we did try to do some budget around the city meetings many, many years ago, before any of, almost
was
anybody sitting in this room was there. Okay, Mr. Trudgeon was there for that. And we did 3 meetings over the course of the summer at 3 different venues around the city, and I think we maybe through the 3 meetings had a total of 20 people participate. And so it was really a challenge to make that. Now, granted, maybe we didn't have the great promotional effort that we could have for it, but we've certainly learned a lot since then. This goes back many years. But it is definitely sometimes a challenge to get people interested until they know what that impact for themselves is. I don't know if other people have thoughts on the council as to the calendar itself or ways we can get more impact or connection with people sooner.
No.
All right. So the request is to approve the calendar as it's been presented this evening.
Correct.
Is there a motion from the council in that regard?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve the budget calendar as proposed. Any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, and I don't see anybody from the public here. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the calendar signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that is approved. Next is item 7E, which is to consider council engagement opportunities. I think probably we struggled with a name for this topic, so we did the best we could. And I don't know, Mr. Treasurer, if you have anything introductory, but otherwise, certainly Councilmember Strawn had requested this item, so we can
Nothing direct.
turn over the floor to Councilmember Strawn.
Thank you. As we are all aware, when we are campaigning, one of the things that people are most concerned about is the lack of knowing what's happening up to the minute about what we're doing. And obviously, it's a lot of times it's directly connected to how it impacts them. I'd say the lack of a newspaper is the greatest concern. And I think we all know that given newspapers, they're not coming back. We're gonna have to readjust our connection to the public. But I do think that with the lack of newspaper, there's a lack of trust and consistent messaging. And how do people know what's really happening and where to go? And obviously, as many times as we direct people to our website and other things, there are still times when people just don't have that connection. So I wanted to find opportunities or talk about our engagement, especially in relation to the IAP2 discussion, extended discussion we had a while ago about where do we fit on that continuum. And I want to make the caveat to start with that the 5 of us are very dedicated. Mr. Trudgeon's very dedicated. We're at many, many things. I don't think it's a matter of trying to multiply the amount of things that we can go to, but maybe trying to be more intentional about where we go and when we are somewhere, making a point of making sure that people know that that is an opportunity for engagement. Instead of calling me every day at noon to tell me about a cart on Snelling Avenue, I'll try to bring it up many times, but I'm not always available in a day job to have that ongoing conversation. So if there was an intentional time, I think the other thing that I would like to consider in doing this is not an election year. So none of us are running for office, and so it cannot be seen in that same light as like this is only to get our face out in the public so that we get some points. So I really wanted to see it as an opportunity to close out Envision Roseville in a strong way, that we would find our way to concentrate and be available. I did speak with Corey Yunke in communications, and we had a long discussion about town halls. And town halls, as they are, really need to be purposeful. And if they were around a budget, it'd have to be really well, we'd have to know what the goal was. If they cannot make substantive changes to it, we need to be prepared to show what can and cannot happen in that meeting. And again, I think it's all about intention. Mr. Hess mentioned an open house, maybe something like that as well. But I asked Mr. Trudgeon to pull some of the things that are coming up yet this year. And he pulled the summer entertainment series. I went there a lot last summer, and I found that most of the people that I spoke with did not live within Roseville. So I don't know that that would be the most beneficial. It's great to meet people. It's great to encourage them to come back, but I don't think that's going to be the bang for our buck where we really get an opportunity. I think Juneteenth was a very successful event last year and it's growing, I think that would be something that we should definitely, and we probably all will be there anyway. Truly, all of us are out all the time. But if there was a space where maybe we took turns being at the entry, we signed up for an hour and we each were, you know, 2 of us at a time were at the door, where we just made a visible point. One thing I did find, that even though you've been mayor for a really long time, the amount of people who could name your name was really low. Last summer went
What if
out.
you get in the news? Some people
Don't do
get-
anything bad just to get in the news. But I think it's not about the name, but it's about the presence. And so I just wanted to find ways. We're in the parade, but we sit in the back of a truck. Maybe we need to be down handing candy to kids, talking to people, so we can be more present within the people in the community. Maybe we don't, I mean, last year was COVID, you know, end of COVID, but I think it doesn't always have to be a different thing that we do, but just a different approach. So it could be discover your parks. I don't know that Fridays with firefighters would necessarily work, but I think especially the last 2 events with Envision Roseville, if we were part of the team there to solicit responses, I think that'd be a really powerful statement to the people in the city that this is something that we really value, the outcome of this interactions. Then I had a lot of fun going through all these different places that have coffee with council. I think that could be very beneficial. I think it could be a challenge. I liked the city of Longmont, California. They had the whole year in advance, and they say who is going to be there, which I don't know, any of us know for sure what we're doing in January, what we're going to be doing on October 21st, but I think it can be helpful that people can see, and maybe I read that they were necessarily 2 members who weren't necessarily always aligned. So it was kind of like 2 different ideas. There are a lot of cities that have where the members have a political party, so you're more aware of that. So I don't know that we would want to try to create more divisions when not necessary, but just went through some of the different places that they were held, just to kind of give an idea. That could be more aspirational, I think. Then there's the town halls. I like that they could go on walking tours with the mayor. That was kind of fun. There was rolling town halls, bike tours, caffeinated town halls. This Mayor Betsy, she's really all over in Fort Worth. And then, you know, library talks. But I think we really have built-in opportunities this year, finishing out our Envision Roseville, that we have a goal. We've set the goal. We know what it is. We really want to get as much community engagement as possible. And I think it gives us an opportunity to go beyond inform, which is where people come and tell us at meetings during public comment. We don't really engage. We can consult from our commission, but I think there's an opportunity for greater involvement. And then I think that even helps us build our piece of how do we find those commissioners who haven't, I really know that it's so much about relationship. People just don't show up unless they have a common connection to you and they feel comfortable. So I wanted to bring forward the opportunity to try to intentionally be at some of these events. And obviously we all have our own lives too, and that won't always work. But I wanted to bring forward the thought process of us, you know, signing up and saying, hey, yeah, I'll be there, and kind of making a commitment to at least the Envision Roseville, closing that off successfully, and then maybe 1 or 2 other events throughout the summer that we might be at anyway, but really make a point of being visibly present at.
All right, thank you. Thoughts, feedback, questions? I appreciate talking about the, I jumped in because I didn't see my hands start, but, you know, talking about being intentional about some things, and what I was thinking about was like the Juneteenth, and I know, having gone to a lot of Discover Your Parks, you sort of have a group of people who are very interested in their neighborhood and the city, and it's the city stuff. So even sort of for lack of a better word, tabling at those events where, you know, we sort of do shifts and we have information, we can answer questions. You know, I think that can be something that can, like you're saying, we can tie into something that's already on the calendar and try to tie in with that. You know, I think you're right, it might be more aspirational to work towards sort of the pre-scheduled year of coffees with the council or something like that. And so, but not that we can't do it, it's just, you know, we need to take the steps that we need to take to get to where we need to be. So, but I think that there's some positive things in there. I was glad that Mr. Hess brought up the open houses, because actually, I think that is something that was appreciated and well participated in by people in the community when we had sort of the open house where people could come in and, you know, tour. Obviously, the fire department, police department, and public works are always the most popular places, but as they are with the young people that come. But certainly, it's a great chance for members of the community to get to know both staff and council, which I think is helpful. The other piece of it is that I think we can do the inform part, because I think that actually can build some connections that can be used, you know, for other purposes. And actually, the inform is us informing the public about something. And where that comes in is maybe something like a version of Roseville U. Now, Roseville U was like a 6-week course, 2 or 3 hours each week, and it was a very huge time commitment. And we had some dedicated people that did it, but maybe there's ways to do something much smaller than that is easier to engage with for people, because people learn about what the city does. And I think that's half of our battle in engaging with people, is people say, well, why do you want to talk to me? What do I have to contribute to this? Because people don't know necessarily what the city does. You know, there's a reason people don't know who the mayor is, because they don't even know really what the city does, per se. And it's not any deficiency on the part of the city or the mayor in terms of trying to inform people, but I think it's just the reality of everything else that people are, you know, need to know about in their lives, and that this doesn't always, you know, just like audits, it doesn't always rise to the level for everybody the same way. So, but no, I think you know, doing some things where we can do inform as a way to build connections and then use, you know, those connections for further engagement, where we're trying to do a different level of engagement with people, because, you know, a lot of it is relationships. I think that makes sense. I do think that we can do some tabling at events, especially events where people are there and sort of maybe expecting something like that. That always helps too. And then we can, you know, talk more about some of these other things, you know, as to what council thinks about it. I know there are mayors in other communities that do like the walk with the mayor and things like that. I haven't talked to any of them to understand whether they, you know, obviously they keep doing it, so they must feel there's some benefit to it. But, you know, I don't know that's, you know, or having office hours. Sometimes I know we've had a couple of past council members years ago that did office hours, and you know, these days, the way people connect with people is different, so I don't know, you know, it could be good or bad. I'm not going to prejudge anything, but I'd be open to hearing from the rest of the council now that I've talked way too long. Councilmember Bratton?
I'm in favor of you walking with everybody.
Individually.
I could use,
I'm signing you up for daily meetings.
All day.
I was going to look for clarity, and I think it's become more clear, but you have a bunch of ideas here, but really you're starting from, hey, we have some things we're already doing. How can we make those more impactful? Is that fair?
Yes, indeed. And I think, you know, these are different ideas that people have brought to us when we've been out and about. These are things that people have mentioned, oh, wouldn't this be cool? But when it really comes down to it, baby steps. We need to start. And again, we are all 5 of us are out in the community, but I want it to be as important for the 5 of us to show up to park things and be present as it is to show up when the governor comes to the fire department. Not better or worse, just more, also equally important, because I really think that people, you know, they've elected us to be in charge of what happens, and they don't always show up here. So if we can at least have a relationship, then we're building opportunities to possibly help our commissions be more diverse, or just have new faces. You know, when people go from one commission to the next, we really appreciate their dedication, but it is hard when we have so many people who have been untapped yet.
Thank you. I would agree with the idea potentially of tabling or something like that. I'd written down table with sign for council members at Discovery Parks. Whether that's each one of us commits to one or says, hey, I can make it to this one, then we'll make sure that table is in the pickup truck and there's a sign there for Park and Rec to set up and say, hey, here's a council member, look at them in the cage. No, wait.
I did not volunteer for a dunk tank.
Dunk tank, yeah. So I think that's fine, and with the Envision Roseville things here, I think that we tap that. I know that we asked in the past a few times with the HRIEC or whatever format it was at the time about the concept of an open house, and for various reasons that has not taken legs over time. But I think this year we kind of have some of that covered with that work, but maybe that's a thing to do in the future if we thought that was valuable. I don't want to add a lot to people's lives because I do think there's a lot of tapping. And so I think part of it is what you mentioned when you brought this up was that people know we're there and that this is a spot you can come talk to us or something like that. That's where the tabling comes in. I think most of us when we're at events try to wear a tag unless it's really obvious why we're there, but that certainly
I do
some of
think
these
it's
things
hard when we
people
walk
know.
around though. Sometimes people are like, oh, they're so-and-so.
Yep.
And I think if we're really intentional about standing at a place and being present, even if it's just for 45 minutes, it gives people the impression that we're available. And it says, then they know we're available. I sometimes when I head to Cub at 7:30 in the morning, I really don't want to talk about that right now. I don't know what that is, but I just don't really want to have, hoodie.
Don't wear your council name.
I
tag
don't wear
at
my,
7:30
I
in
don't
the
want to do
morning.
that, but
would
still
help.
people
Good.
know who you are. But no, I think then we revisit, hey, this wasn't that successful, or maybe we build on that. But I think we have this great opportunity this year as we close out Envision Roseville to really try to give that our all. And then I think I really was just like, look at all these things that other cities are doing, but how can we make small steps? And I just, like I said, I was really hoping for intention, more about it, because I know we're all out there all the time. And I know often there is a table with the parks, they just don't often know the assistant parks director as well, or that may not seem as impactful then to chat with one of us about something.
Councilmember Shore.
Yeah, and actually, I do go to most of the events, but the thing is, none of you know that I go to all those events, let alone the residents. So, so when you say intentional, like you're saying these opportunities, of course, I see the mayor just about at every event, so I'll have to say that, but, but then, of course, we have to be and it makes sense to be organized because we got to make sure the open meeting law and all that it's people know, because if all of us show up and it's not public knowledge, you got to be careful about that too. So organizing who's going where does make some sense on that aspect. And then especially if we're going to have like a table, because you want to make sure that that's something planned. And so there are a lot of events in the city. And so I don't think we need to add anything. I think we can use the ones we have and really utilize them. Because, some of these might be underutilized. And I do like the open house idea, though. That would be good. And to...
I think this is way too much. Just P.S. I agree fully with Jason. This is too much of a list. I really think this is like... If we really, but I know I don't have time to go to all the Discovery Parks and the firefighters and all that. And like I said,
But could I finish speaking?
Sure.
Thank you. But what I'm saying is we have so many, we don't have to be at all of them, but we have so many opportunities that there's enough here already for us to pick from and make it intentional. And having a table or being that piece of it. Now, we want to make sure that somehow that gets, you can you show we have these events, but then how do you let people know, oh yeah, and the council's going to be there? I suppose we have to figure out the communication people can do that. So I would also say we need to work with the communication group to figure out how to get that out there and that, so.
And I've already spoken with Corey several times about this, and so this was kind of, the synthesis is based on the conversation with he and Ian about, where would be the most. But yeah, I think if you said at the table there was no more than 2 people at once, then we take care of that ourselves, even if more than one of us is, 2 of us
Yeah,
are at
I
the
was going to
event.
say, if there's 8, if I'm counting right, if I can see correctly, it's 7 or 8 Discover Your Parks events, we can we can have a sign up that we work through Pat to get
Right.
as many of us at as many of those as we can and deal with, potential issues. I think, and then we have to think about sort of what we're doing there, I think, and let people know that, because people need to know why they're being engaged. My thought is that Discover Your Parks events are opportunities to just kind of generally talk about general stuff, and not maybe very specific, unless we want to use those for a particular purpose to either get information in people's hands, like we were doing a lot last year with the Envision Roseville brochure. That was kind of our job. Whenever Councilmember Etten and I were at Discover Your Parks together, we were always handing those out. Yep. But I think it also makes sense to have an opportunity for people to talk to us, because there may be things that they want to talk to us about, and if they know that's that opportunity. Same with, Juneteenth, similar, and there may be specific information we also want to have available to people at Juneteenth that might be different from other things. I don't know. With the Envision Roseville events, it may make sense to put some thought into what role and what purpose we can have in terms of that engagement, because that's a very specific engagement effort for a very specific purpose. And we can tie into that still, but it makes sense not for us to be there talking about something over here when this is about this. So that can be planned as well. So yeah, I think there's great opportunities to do it in a way that's manageable, and that, that our resources can handle too. But then, and I would say maybe after we do this, over this period of time, we have another conversation later this year about maybe thinking about planning for 2024 and what we might be able to do then.
So if I could just summarize, I think I'm hearing leveraging the existing events, specifically Juneteenth and Discover Your Parks, for council members to be there and have a table where we can promote that you folks will be there and to talk about whatever. Then with the Envision Roseville, 2 items we have, at least right now for sure, but define the role of what the council will be there for, and it's obviously specifically that. There will probably be some overlap of Envision Roseville activities at Discover Your Parks as well.
Sorry, I was gonna say.
So there's always a role as that, but just maybe generally speaking, I think that's very easy, and we can reach out to council members to sign up for certain dates and times. And sometimes you're not going to be able to make a date, period, because of other obligations. But we can do that and promote that. I think that's very easy for us to do, and just leverage what we already have in place here and just put a little extra effort to make sure you guys are set up properly, and people know you're there, and they can choose to interact. I think those events, especially Discovery Parks, is really community residents coming out, and that's a really great opportunity. I get the point. Summer Entertainment Series is people from all around the metro, and it's really hard to directly engage with residents because there's many other people there too. So
They're delightful, but we can't, that's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Well, we do a couple of other things that I know that the parade was mentioned, and actually many of the people in the parade audience are not Roseville residents either, because they have kids that are in the bands. That's a
Right.
huge thing that you run into. So there are a lot of families from around the area that have all of our campaign materials and stickers and things like that had no chance of voting for people in Roseville. But anyway, so once again, it's knowing the audience and being able to really, figure out what makes the most sense. The other thing, as to events and connections, now I lost that because I got off on the parade, but shoot.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, while you think about that, we mentioned Fridays with firefighters, and obviously that's during the daytime. If you show up, you don't have to worry about the dunk tank. I'm already going to be in the dunk tank one of the days, so we have one of those days taken care of.
And then, of course, you're going to check out the open house situation. That should come back, right?
Yeah, I think, I think
It might be a
more
later this year conversation,
Yeah,
if that makes sense, to kind of bring back after some thought. It may make sense to purposely get it on an agenda for the HRIAC to talk about
Right,
too.
yes.
As something, to see, to figure, to weigh in on as part of wanting to engage people in the
I think it'd
community
be
on what we're
helpful
doing.
to know if the HRIC thought interpreters or other,
Oh, exactly, all
resources
those
would
things
be
that
helpful.
may be helpful that we haven't thought of in terms of just making it work. Now I remember what the other thing was, is that whenever we're doing these efforts, especially maybe at Discover Your Parks, if we can remember to have some kind of feedback opportunity for people who've engaged with us, to just let us know what they thought about that and that opportunity, and provide feedback that we can use later to help our evaluation of what we're doing. It's kind of nice to be able to kind of close out, and maybe it's a card with a QR code and an email address or whatever, and just say, hey, thanks for talking with us, and by the way, we'd really appreciate hearing from you what you thought of this, or something
survey?
like that. Yeah, because I think that
Satisfaction.
a lot of times we don't get that feedback in anything that we do, and that's, it includes all of the engagement we do about land use and things like that. It really makes sense if we check in with the people that participated in the process to let us know what they thought about the process, if they liked it, if they didn't, if they think things could be improved or whatever. Obviously there'll be people that'll be upset about the development and however it goes, one way or the other, but knowing how people feel about the process, we think we're doing a pretty good job with some of this stuff, but, we don't have real good data, and data is something we're trying to focus on here, so it might be good to work that into all of our engagement efforts, is to get that feedback as to, did we do a good job or not? All right. Anything else on this? I don't know, Councilmember Strawn, have we adequately,
No, I'm really excited that.
I was gonna say no.
No, I'm very excited that people are as enthused about it. And again, I really want to emphasize, because, all of you are even more dedicated than myself as far as at being at things. So it's not about it's not about a lack, that you're not doing what the expectation is. Just, I think always it's helpful to try to relook at it and see if we can make it more meaningful, and if come November we look at it and go, that wasn't very helpful, well, then we have a vote. If we don't try it, we don't know.
All right. Very good. That concludes our business items this evening. We do have consideration of some council minutes, and hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at those. We've got our minutes from our April 10th council meeting and our April 17th council meeting. Are there any changes or corrections that need to be noted as opposed to what's been presented, or motion to approve one or both? Councilmember Bratton.
I don't usually get into the details on these, but for some reason it's jumped out at me in the April 17th meeting on page 6. April 17, page 6, line 253. It says, Councilmember Etten asked as Abdo looks at this, will they be looking at each position description and range, and he did not think that should be happening. And I think that I was referring to the city council be looking at each of these positions, not Abdo, because I think Abdo should be looking at all these things. Anyway, it ended up being quite confusing as to whether we thought they should be looking at the position descriptions, which I think is a
Which
big part of
minutes
their
were
job.
those?
Sorry, what?
April 17th.
I'm sorry.
April.
I was trying to find my minutes.
253,
Yeah.
April 17th.
Yeah.
So at least to clear this up, what I would suggest, Councilmember asked, even though asked as Abdo looks at this, I don't know, but I don't like that. But Councilmember asked as Abdo looks at this, will the city council be looking at each position description and range instead of they? Just specifically letting know that because I was asking about whether we are reviewing this, part of the confusion of what level of involvement are we having and targeting here. So just instead of the word they, having the 3 words, the city council, just to clarify who was looking at what.
So I think I agree that you weren't talking about Abdo looking at it.
No.
It was asked as we look at this, will the council be looking at each? Does that work? Or you could put the council, as the council looks at this, will they be looking at each? Maybe you just
Yeah, it
swap
could
out
be
city council for Abdo and you're good.
As the council looks at this, will they be, getting rid of Abdo and instead put the council.
That's pretty easy.
Yep, do it that way, that's fine.
So we
Remember
remove
Etten asked
Abdo and
as-
put the city council.
Swap it out,
Yep,
yeah.
yep. Thank you.
Any other notes on the minutes of either of those meetings? Right, if not, is there a motion to approve one or both of those minutes?
I would move both.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Etten to approve both sets of minutes, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder. Any discussion on the motion? And that's, of course, as just amended this evening. If there's no discussion, all those in favor of approving those 2 sets of minutes as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those minutes are approved. That then brings us to the consent agenda items, minus item A, which was taken up earlier in the meeting. Separately, Councilmember, Mr. Trudgeon, would you give us a brief summary of the remaining consent agenda items?
Yes, certainly. Control room, can I have the computer screen show up? Item 10B approves a temporary liquor license to the Rotary Club for the Taste of Rose Fest event on June 22nd, and a THC products license for a business called Ascent that will be located at 2216 County Road D in the Tower Glen Shopping Center. This will be the 6th of the 8 THC licenses we have available in the city. Item 10C approves the purchase of 2 hybrid Hyundai vehicles for the Community Development Department. Due to supply chain issues, these vehicles will need to be ordered now in order to receive them in the first quarter of 2024. We are still double checking with the vendor about these vehicles and their anti-theft technology, but we do believe these vehicles will have the most up-to-date anti-theft technology when they are delivered. Item 10D awards the contract for the city's 2023 pavement management project to T.A. Shifsky and Sons in the amount of $1,114,979.24. Shifsky and Sons were the lowest bid among 5 bidders and was 26.5% less than the engineer's estimate, which we are glad to see. The costs for the work will be paid from the street, stormwater, sanitary sewer, and water utility funds, and there is a portion of the sanitary sewer costs for the project that will be paid by private property owners, as they will be getting their private sewer lines from the main replaced. Item 10E authorizes entering into agreement with Ramsey County for the Cleveland Avenue pathway improvements from Iona Street to the Kohler property. As Cleveland is a county road, the pathway will be split between the county and the city. The agreement also details the ownership and maintenance responsibilities for the county and city for the trail into the future. Item 10F is a similar arrangement between Ramsey County and the city for the Lexington Avenue pathway between Highway 36 and County Road B2. Item 10G approves entering into professional services contract for mental health program services to the Roseville Police Department. Since 2021, the city has required our officers to do a mandatory mental health check-in. This action will more formalize our relationship with Masa Consulting to provide those services on an ongoing basis. The cost for the 2023 work will be paid through a donation by the Roseville Police Foundation. Item 10H approves entering into a grant contract to receive the 2023 Pathways to Policing grant from the state in the amount of $20,000. The grant will allow Roseville CSOs and cadets to receive up to $10,000 in reimbursements for the education cost to become eligible to be certified as a Minnesota Peace Officer. Item 10I receives the city's grant application update. And then finally, item 10J accepts a Ramsey County Emergency Management and Homeland Security grant that will provide a drivable, camera-assisted micro-robot. The micro-robot will be utilized by officers to receive real-time information and by being deployed into areas that have potential danger. Utilizing the micro-robot will keep everyone safe and help de-escalate situations. The police department will be creating a detailed policy on its use and its deployment in the near future. That is the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there any questions, or excuse me, first of all, is there a motion to approve the consent items B through J?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Bratton, seconded by Councilman Groff. Discussion on the motion. Councilman Bratton.
I would just like to note an appreciation for the purchase of the Hyundai Tucsons as hybrids and smaller SUVs, replacing significantly less fuel-efficient vehicles. That they can serve the same purpose for the people who are doing the work, and I appreciate that sensible change over our fleet.
Other discussion on the motion? I would just appreciate in the presentation this evening that Mr. Trudgeon was responsive to my request to answer the question about the security or the theft prevention on the Hyundai model. And then also I did have some conversations with Deputy Chief Adams about the policies related to the robot and video related to that. And my understanding is that it's not going to be video like a body-worn camera where the video is stored and archived and available. It's live video only to help for the driving of the unit, but it still makes sense to have policies in place, and so I appreciate the conversations that I had about that and that it was mentioned in the presentation. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of these items of being approved signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously. Future agenda review, Mr. Trudgeon.
Yes, thank you. We are meeting next Monday, starting off as the EDA. Have a couple items about receiving an award for energy audits from CEE. Consider final changes to the small business microloan program, and then also consider replenishment of the Roseville revolving loan fund. The regular meeting after that, we'll receive an update on the classification and compensation study, primarily about comparable cities. We'll bring that forward for council review and discussion. We also have the Parks Department would like to give an Emerald Ash Borer program update. We're deep into it and want to provide the council updated information. And I do have City Commission system discussion as a question mark. I did get the information today. We can talk offline. I can't open it up, but
I think I gave you access
Okay.
later.
okay.
Get you it.
So I am planning to have that bring forward. I just wanted to check with the subcommittee if they're ready to go. Okay.
Yes.
So we'll plan on having that on the 17th.
Do you need a written piece?
If I have access, I should be able
You should give him that too.
I was gonna say.
just in
That's not
case.
trust technology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then on the 22nd, we have the LGBTQIA+ month proclamation. We'll have recognition of the 22-23 essay art contest participant. I think we have one person that will be reading a poem, award winner. We'll receive an all department equity update, joint meeting with the Human Rights Inclusion and Engagement Commission. We'll bring back conversation for the city commission application process, kind of continue that conversation. Then we have a variety of public hearings for city right-of-ways. These are pretty standard vacations, is my understanding. There's some additional ones that will be a little bit more detailed and some more conversation around, but these should be pretty straightforward. And then as of now, the only item we have for the June 5th meeting is a joint meeting with the Finance Commission.
All right, questions on upcoming meetings? I think we may have some letters out of order on the name of our proclamation. They're all there, they're just not in the traditional order.
The LGBT, yes, MTV, yeah.
It sounded weird when it came out.
Yeah.
I know, it did.
Just read what was in front of me.
Minor point, though. All right, if there's no questions, are there any council member initiated items for future meetings or council liaison reports or announcements? I'll just note that the Ramsey County League of Local Governments had their sort of social hour, if you will, their spring event last Thursday, and it was pretty well attended. And I definitely would encourage council members to participate both in those whenever they can. Those are usually in the evenings after work. They try to do them 2 to 3 times a year is the goal, which is up from previous years. But it's a great way to do networking, especially because the material content meetings that they do on Friday mornings each month are going to remain remote meetings for the foreseeable future, just because it's easier to get better attendance when people don't have to travel to a site. The downside is you don't get that networking opportunity, so they're trying to supplement that with the opportunities at other times. So I wanted to report that to the council and encourage council participation in those whenever possible, as well as city staff. Possible topics coming up include the sacred communities legislation and how cities may be able to deal with that, or what it is for a lot of cities that may not even know. Just to let folks know that that's under consideration as a possible topic for the future. Any other, Councilmember Groff?
Just to update you, Northeast Youth and Family Services had their first open house this year, so we had that on last Thursday. It was very successful. Had a lot of representatives from the various cities in the county, and also member communities of the members. So it was really educational, because the director takes you through and tells you what the programming is and what the different programs are. I mean, it's much, for me, it was a better way to learn than to read something that you can see physically, where the kids are having their play therapy, what the reasons for it are, art therapy, why they do that, how they use these different types of therapy to reach different kids with different issues. So I would recommend it. It will be coming up quarterly this year, and next year she's actually thinking of trying to do it once a month, which I thought was a pretty big, because she's trying to get more community input now, since we haven't been doing the annual luncheon that we used to do before COVID. So just an update on that.
And I think as of our meeting this afternoon, we had heard from Arden Hills that Arden Hills is back in.
They are back.
Fest.
That's
Yeah, so
correct.
that's a good
And
thing.
who else? St. Anthony, and a couple of the school districts are using their services again too. So
Great.
it's been going well.
All right. If there's no other liaison reports, announcements, we do have other business this evening. And so there's a couple of things that need to be talked about in relation to that. First, just from a logistical point of view, especially for the folks that are broadcasting the meeting this evening, when we, presuming we do, adjourn to the closed executive session, We'll be doing that at another room outside of the council chambers. It'll be off camera because it's a closed session. When that's complete, we will return to open session and officially adjourn, but we won't come back here to the council chambers, and we won't come back on camera for that. So from the point of view of folks watching at home in video, this is going to be pretty close to the end of what you're going to see in that regard, and I just wanted to let the folks in the production booth know that as well. So as to the closed session, in accordance with Minnesota statutes 13D point whatever it is, we have the option to do closed sessions of council meetings. Obviously, normally, council meetings need to be open and accessible to the public, but under certain exceptions, we can close meetings, and one of those exceptions is to do a performance evaluation of an employee. And so that is the purpose of the proposed closed session this evening under statute. There is also the option that the individual subject to the review has the option to have the review held in public. So I'll see if Mr. Trudgeon, our evaluation subject this evening, wishes this to be a public discussion in the evaluation.
I do not. Closed session is good.
Mr. Trudgeon has not availed himself of the option for it to be public. Duly noted. With that, then, we will need a motion to close the meeting to go into the executive session for the purpose of evaluating the city manager's
So
performance.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder. I think I heard Councilmember Etten second, second. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We will go into then closed executive session, and once again, we'll adjourn that in open session, but not on camera.